Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the NZ Property Ladder podcast. I'm your host, Jean, and today I'm here with Libby, who's a representative from Rosella Property Management at Ray White Remuera. Welcome, Libby.
Hi, Jean. Thank you.
Hello. So it's very exciting talking about more property this time around, in the rental market, systems and processes. And so, Libby, one word that I would describe you is, wow, you're a powerhouse, because you carry yourself really well, eloquently, and you're just such a lovely person to be around. But the knowledge that you carry is like a machine, and everything in your head, I don't know how you do it, but it's structured, and you're so good at explaining all the complex terms and structures into simple steps. And so tell me about yourself and your background.
I was living in Australia with my family, and we decided we'd move back to New Zealand. So I had a year of real estate with the McGrath Group, and I came back to New Zealand and started off as a salesperson in my second year. And the children were still quite young, and I decided I didn't want to have too much time away. So I sort of moved myself into an operations role. And with Ray White Remuera at the time, it was, in the early stages of growth. And so I was lucky enough to be able to be part of a group who provided all sorts of new innovations. And we tested it daily, weekly, and we just built systems and processes from there.
Your background is so extensive, and it went from, doing sales and within real estate, it's like broken up into different roles that you went through before you got to business development management, which is what you currently do today. And so I'm just really curious, because I remember that you used to run a consulting business, and that had a lot to do with coaching and mentoring real estate agents around the systems and processes, and how to streamline that process to result into a successful outcome, whatever the outcome may be, depending on the goal. So how did you structure that, and how did you make it a bespoke process for them?
I think the main reason people come into real estate is for the freedom, and then one of the reasons they leave is because of the freedom. They come in with a lot of time, but they negotiate on how to use it. So we started setting up a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually structure. So it ended with a business plan, but it started with a business plan, and then we broke it down backwards incrementally, and we put together a weekly structure that people could work from, and we could then audit with them to just keep them on track with where they needed to be with their phone calls and their client base, their pipeline, their past clients, and their database, client base, making sure that everybody stayed in contact, because it's a business of relationships after all. Real estate is just a business of relationships.
That's really incredible to hear about the approach. And looking back at my own real estate career, as you know, I am in my third year of doing real estate, and I also started out in property management to have a bit of a boot camp, really, throwing myself into property. And so because I went down that route, I was just learning on the go, but I didn't have proper systems in place that I could learn from. And so I know that everyone learns differently, and some people are more hands-on, some people are a bit more conservative. So how do you, when you first meet the salesperson during your time as a consultant, how did you identify what worked well for them?
I treated it like a highway. People's real estate businesses a highway, and some people have 2 lanes, some people have 4 and 6. So as long as everyone in their business was on their lane and they were working collaboratively, it multiplies. So the first thing I would do is start with the salesperson and unpack everything in their business. We'd look inside their database and do an audit. We'd look at how they structured themselves. We'd look at what they did health-wise to hold their energy. And we'd also look at their knowledge, what they were strong and confident with and what they felt they needed to work on and upgrade. So by the time we got to the end of that audit, we had a really clear picture, and honestly, it didn't really change from person to person that much. It was just how we could work with them and modify some of their behaviours so that they could leverage their business, basically, build it.
That's really good. And in terms of when let's say the salesperson goes to an appointment and they end up signing the listing and they choose the method of sale, do you also help them? Do you also help mentor them through that process and to carry out that marketing campaign for that property as well?
Yeah, I found the most powerful tool for that was a vendor report. And by looking at somebody's vendor report and really unpacking it, you can see where there were strengths and you could see where there were opportunities to add more value, modify what their communication was so that they could have a more robust campaign and a more likely outcome of a sale at auction. Yep.
I definitely agree with you in regards to the vendor reporting, because I've been trained to prioritize the vendor reporting, and it's not just about every week you email out, hey, here's the vendor report and good luck. I won't speak to you again for another week. It's more like what's in that vendor report and how you write it. So based on what you have seen, what do you think makes a good vendor report?
Lots of really carefully put together information. I don't think you can ever have too much information in a vendor report, because even though they say they don't read it, they do. Having a summary on the front so that if people are overwhelmed by the volume of information, they can just have a look at the 2 cover pages, and if they want more information, it's easy to find it. The Ray White systems are amazing for that because their platforms are so strong. They've got templated structures for everything that you need in a campaign. Ray White Remuera has taken it to 10 new levels. So, and there are administrative experts in there who will pull anything to pieces and help you unpack it and decipher it with you.
No, I did notice that with MJRE, because before MJRE, I've been at multiple offices across Auckland, whether it was South, West, Central, I've seen it all. And out of the offices, in my personal experience, MJRE is the most comprehensive in terms of how they sit down with you one-on-one and break your business apart and then put it back in again. And you do a similar kind of structure as well, even in your day-to-day. Is that right?
Yep. And I think it's also being able to lean on the right types of people. Like the auctioneers are fantastic people to give you clarity on your vendor report. I mean, they can take one look and see who's going to turn up to auction. So I think tapping auctioneers, the auctioneers that you're working with, are a great resource. More senior salespeople also have a great unconscious competence, and they can see information and they can guide you really well as well. Yeah.
I did notice that because I worked with multiple agents and every single agent had a different process. And I know from an outsider's point of view, it's like when you go to a listing appointment, you get given information about, oh, here's the method of sale. This is an auction. This is a price by negotiation, et cetera, et cetera. And the salesperson will sit down with you and explain the pros and cons. And they would, 90% of the time, they would recommend an auction. But it's also a case by case. but I did notice that with MJRE, they have a high clearance rate. What do you think was the result of that high clearance rate?
Constant reviews, constant audits, constant checking, constant discussions, a lot of education on a Thursday. When something's going really well, they educate on it. When something has broken, they fix it, they educate on it. So it's just constant learning. It's eternal curiosity by the owners.
No, that's totally understandable. And I know now you do more of the property management side of things. What's your day-to-day like?
I'm not actually a property manager. There are 5 really skilled property managers in the team. I'm part of the new business, so I'm really building relationships with owners who own properties who are either managing them themselves, or I'm going and finding people who are considering having their properties managed, and it's about understanding, again, the process and explaining the advantages, particularly in the climate we're in now with healthy homes compliance and the increase in litigation, the changes in insurance policies and funding. So it's a really great conversation, and it's exactly the same conversation that we have in real estate.
That's actually really interesting to hear, and it's definitely eye-opening too. When you say it's the same process for rental as sales, what would be, I guess, the difference in terms of both?
I think the only difference is, well, firstly, the similarities are you meet people, you establish some rapport with them, you start to build a relationship and an understanding around what they're hoping to achieve with their next steps, and then you wrap service and information around them and just work with them while they progress and become ready to take the next step, which is to bring their property into a management. And that's right the same across sales as it is for property management. The difference is one is either a house sale or a property is put into management with a property manager.
That's incredible.
I think those are the only 2 differences. We need pipelines, we need client bases, we need structured daily phone calls, we need education to maintain, to work alongside the market that changes day by day, week by week, and just to remain informed.
That's really good. And I know, like salespeople, we're closely monitoring the market and looking into our farming area. Is that also the same for rentals as well?
Yeah, I guess I've chosen a farming area based on the relationships I have access to, which is the client base. So yes, farming area is the same. What was your other question? Sorry.
That's all right. So we're monitoring the market really closely as salespeople. Do you guys also do the same?
Yeah.
In terms of rental?
Absolutely.
My apologies.
No, that's great. Thanks. It's yes, absolutely. I track the market mainly because I'm just so curious and nerdy and interested. So I track the numbers each week, and I've noticed that there are a lot of similarities. The property management team this week, the leasing agent has done 36 viewings. They did that's a 4 on top of last week.
That's amazing.
The number that's one person doing 6 viewings a day. It's a lot. The number of properties online for Rosella at the moment is 36. That is, I think, up a couple on last week. Remuera sales versus last week, there were 158 properties for sale in Remuera last week. 158 properties for sale this week, which is down by 9 on last week. That's the biggest drop I've seen in the last 10 weeks in Remuera. Properties for rent in Remuera today are 93, so it's down 4. It's interesting because the sales and the properties for sale and the properties for rent fluctuate quite similarly day by day. And they appear at the moment when they go up, they both go up. When they go down, they both go down. So that's definitely it's a consistent metric I've noticed. what are we feeling out there? And I ask the salespeople this all the time. Properties that are, and this is for rent, properties that are priced correctly will rent because tenants have a lot of choice. So if it's not priced correctly, they can go somewhere else. What's moving well this week? There's been really strong interest on one-bedroom properties in very well-placed streets that are central in the good suburbs. The other thing that's consistent across sales and the rentals is finding the right person for the property seems to be quite critical at the moment, and I'm making an assumption that it's winter. Most people don't want to move. So finding the right person for the property is quite specific, whereas in summer, the sun's out, everybody's out, and they're just going through the property. So winter, it appears
it's really cold.
More disparate, yeah.
It's cold, it's raining, and we just had a weekend of open homes, and we both, my colleague Fraser and I both got saturated in the rain. So that was a fun time. Do you feel like, you did mention the period of winter where the market would cool down because one of the factors being weather. I'm assuming that also affects attendance as well at viewings?
Yeah, there are always the really popular properties that present beautifully, they're in good positions, and they have some sort of magic formula that people like. And it's the same for sales and rentals. And for everything else, it's getting the pricing right and getting as many people to the property as you possibly can, creating a sense of competition for rent and for sale, and then working with people to get them into a tenancy agreement.
That's incredible. And when I used to work in property management, it was simply the photos were taken on our phone and we're just praying that someone will show up or inquire. And I just love the way you structure your business and the processes, because it's so clear. And especially when you go to a client, that is definitely beneficial to them as well, because there's that transparency that's being communicated in the meeting as well. Do you feel like with that process, it resulted in a high success rate for the team?
Yes.
It's incredible, because I know that actually Rosella Property Management was recently awarded for #1.
Yes.
Yes, for growth. Yep. Congratulations.
I don't think there's anyone who denies how hard people in property management work. They are a very hardworking team.
Definitely. It's not an easy job. Definitely not an easy job. And, congratulations to the team at Rosella.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what do you think was the secret to success for that?
I think the leasing team are working very hard and very consistently, and they're the two leasing agents are really driving it. And the property managers themselves are building their knowledge and their confidence and their ability into managing their own portfolios really strongly. They've got a really strong leadership person in there who's got 20 years experience, and she's very accessible to everybody and she looks after everybody beautifully.
I do agree with the accessibility playing a strong role in success and growth. Communication is always something that we talk about, but it's always something that we need to work on as well. What do you think makes good communication to a client or to you?
I think consistency is really critical both for sales and for property management, because having one piece of communication one week and very little or nothing the next week creates uncertainty in people's mind, and when they're uncertain, they start to worry, and when they start to worry, it's easy to let things escalate. So again, back to vendor reports and reports to the owners who are waiting for their properties to be leased. just sending them through information to give them certainty so that they feel confident with what's being done to get their property.
Can I just say that is the most incredibly comprehensive process, and that's incredible. If I were to invest in property, become a landlord, that is exactly what I want to hear, and that's what I would expect as well. I know that you touched on this briefly, but what are we seeing out there right now in the rental market? Is it because it's winter? What are we seeing at the moment?
Well, just looking at the numbers over the last few weeks, the numbers of properties for rent in Remuera have declined. They've declined by 9 on last week, and they declined slightly the week before. Good properties are renting well. Good properties that are well priced are renting well. Is there a favourite type of property? I don't know. It's more well presented, Healthy Homes compliant. It has to be now because it's a standard New Zealand wide, and properties that are close to amenities like public transportation, train stations, good shopping, and properties that have garaging and carports, because a tenant's most valuable asset is their car most of the time.
That's really interesting because maybe it's just me, but I thought it would be the house, but it's actually really fascinating to hear that it's actually the car being the most prized or their top priority in terms of what they look for in rental.
Well, that doesn't really come from research. It's more what I've noticed when I talk to people at open homes in sales or investors. Investors have some really great information, and they like properties that have parking, and preferably garaging or off-street parking at least, so people can get their cars off the road.
No, that's really interesting. And for sales, we're seeing a lot in Hobsonville with the new builds for sale right now. Yep. And I know that there's an oversupply at the moment, and it's happening across all Auckland actually, especially out in West Auckland, West Massey, Te Atatu South, Te Atatu Peninsula. We're seeing it all. And what's the common concern that we're seeing right now with landlords when you talk to a landlord and they're thinking of signing up? What would you say is a common obstacle for them to, I guess, tackle?
I would say a lack of clarity over what they can expect in terms of service, and a lot of the people I speak to are basing their understanding on what has gone wrong before. So overcoming that and explaining the difference in how we manage leasing and property management is a big piece. Having the visible process pieces and the system pieces is very encouraging for people. There's a lot of transparency there because you can go into any parts of those platforms and explain using case studies what happened, what went right, what went wrong, what we did about that. But it's more, people start off talking about pricing as what is concerning them, but when you dig, that there are actually other concerns that relate more to a lack of certainty and just not understanding what's going on in the background, which is why vendor reporting in property management is so powerful.
That I do agree. It all comes down to good communication, and not just good. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be strong. You don't need to necessarily be available 24/7, but at least respond to any queries as early as you can. Respond, and I do agree with that because
it's like sales. Don't wait for something to break. Just pick the phone up and talk about it.
And I think Rosella does a great job at communicating, because whenever you guys get an inquiry at any time of the day or night, you guys still respond at the time that suits you, but also in a timely manner at the same time. And I find it really impressive that you guys are able to action that despite the number of listings that you guys have for rent as well.
Well, they're a great team. They collaborate really well together. They're very open with each other. They're really open with their learning, and they use one situation for everybody to learn from, which is great. Same on the sales side.
That's incredible to hear. And would you say that you would have, what would be a memorable case study for your team personally that you guys experienced recently that really changed your perspective of how you approach clients and business in general?
I would say, and it's a property that I'm looking after at the moment, the owners are very anxious about it. And so I gave them a vendor report as if the property was being marketed for sale. And it seemed to really comfort them, give them certainty, and let them know that there is actually a lot going on that they can't see, but they can feel comfortable that we're doing everything we can.
That's really good that you're being transparent. And I think it's something that we all can learn from as well, even in sales.
I think that's all we have. All we have is transparency. I don't know of anything else. And if you're giving people everything that you have, I think it counts for a lot. And also asking if they're getting what they need, if there's anything that we're missing that they would like to know about. Just offering that seems to put people's minds at rest. Exactly, and people will see and feel that as well. And people will notice and appreciate the effort that you've done for them as well. Well, I think that's all the questions that I have. And this has been such an eye-opening conversation. And I know that we love reading books, and we've been talking about Atomic Habits, and we are just big advocates of the 4 laws that's been discussed in that book as well. And you have been the massive advocate of James Clear's book as well. And so are you able to tell me, based on what you've learned from that book, how do you apply it to your business? Small incremental growth over time, and it starts with one habit each day, and just making sure you initiate it and you account for it. And you only have to account for yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else, but having a journal every day and just noting down how many phone calls you've made, how many owners and properties you've added to your client base, making sure you've got a pipeline, staying in touch with your past clients. And this is I'm talking property management, but this is for both sides of the highway. This is for sale and for rent side of the highway. So there's a great quote from Robin Sharma, and he said, when structure is your springboard, freedom is your splash. And that is, daily structure. It just keeps, believe it or not, it actually it frees you up rather than traps you. Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. And thank you, Libby, for coming to the studio and having a conversation with me. Well, stick around because there's more to come. Hit the follow button and we shall see you soon. Thanks so much, guys. I'm your host, Jean, and see you next time. Bye.